Your heart beats faster than usual, and not in the way it used to when you first fell in love with him. You've been married for 7 years, 7 years of shared routines, bedtime stories for your kid, morning coffee rituals, and the everyday chaos that comes with building a life together. But the comfort of familiarity has started to feel like thin ice, especially after what he told you this morning. He came home late last night from a work party, an event you didn't attend because, well, someone had to stay with the kid. Besides, you never went to his work parties, those were his nights. You were okay with that, until you weren't. The morning after, over breakfast, he mentioned something that stopped you mid-sip of your coffee. He had walked his coworker, let's call her Emma, home. She's in his age bracket, single, lives alone, and, as far as you know, not exactly part of his everyday life at work. Different departments, hardly any overlap, and you've never met her. But he took the bus to the station closest to your house, and instead of heading straight home, he went the opposite way, to her apartment. Walked her all the way to her door. Then turned around and walked back home. 8 minutes. That's how long the detour was. Not enough time for anything to really happen, but just long enough to stir something inside you, a sense of unease that doesn't sit right. The neighborhood is safe, the streets well lit. There was no real reason for him to escort her. It wasn't chivalry, it was something else. A need? A want? You don't know. And then, you remember. The wound that never fully healed. That moment years ago when you stumbled upon explicit messages between him and another woman, another friend. In those messages, they'd exchanged words no married man should ever share with someone who isn't his wife. Words that blurred boundaries, stained trust, and marked the beginning of your sleepless nights. They're no longer friends, at least that's what he says. But it's not just her that's gone, it's your peace of mind too. Now, this isn't the same, you tell yourself. There are no texts, no phone calls, just a walk. But it's not nothing either. It's the detour that nags at you. The detour that took him away from you and into the quiet darkness of another woman's street. He spoke about it so casually, like it was nothing, a chivalrous gesture, a polite act. But it didn't feel polite to you. It felt deliberate, like a choice that had been weighed and measured in his mind before he made it. He didn't have to walk her home, he wanted to. And that's the part that hurts the most. You don't have evidence, just a gut feeling. But you've learned the hard way that feelings can be warnings, signals that something's off. You want to ask him why. You want to tell him that it bothered you, but you also don't want to sound paranoid or clingy. After all, nothing happened. Or maybe something did, something you can't quite see but can certainly feel, the slow erosion of trust, the quiet distance growing between you two, and the shadow of something you can't quite name but are terrified to face. You wonder if you should confront him, but the last time you confronted his betrayal, you ended up losing a piece of yourself in the process. Do you really want to go down that road again? The road where questions lead to answers that you're not sure you want to hear? You remind yourself, marriages are not just built on love, they're built on trust. And when that trust is fractured, even a small act, a detour, an 8-minute walk, can feel like a crack that's ready to split wide open. Maybe he was just being nice. Maybe it meant nothing. But the truth is, it meant something to you. And now, you're left wondering what, if anything, it meant to him. The day drags on, each hour filled with thoughts you can't quite silence. Every little thing he does feels magnified, like you're seeing him through a different lens, one that turns the mundane into something suspicious. He's texting on his phone, and you wonder if it's work or something else. He's quiet at dinner, and you wonder if he's thinking of her or just tired. It's maddening, this dance between doubt and denial. Part of you wants to push it down, bury it deep, and pretend it's all in your head. But you've been down that road before, and it led to the unraveling of every certainty you held dear. That night, when he finally settles into bed, you can't keep it inside any longer. The question escapes before you can stop it. Why did you walk her home? He turns to you, surprise flickering in his eyes, like he wasn't expecting this to resurface. Emma? It was late. I just wanted to make sure she got home safe. Your heart clenches at his nonchalance. He said the right words, but it's not the explanation that you needed, it's the reassurance. The look that says, you have nothing to worry about. But you don't see it. It's a safe neighborhood, you press, your voice steady, but your nerves are fraying. You didn't have to. He sighs, shifting his gaze to the ceiling as if the answers might be written there. I know. But she's not used to walking alone at night. The excuse feels thin, almost rehearsed, and something inside you hardens. It's not just the walk that bothers you, it's the subtle shift in his tone, the defensiveness that you didn't expect. Did she ask you to? He hesitates, just for a fraction of a second, but it's enough. No, I just offered. It hangs between you, this small admission that feels like a breadcrumb leading to something more. You search his face, looking for a crack in his calm, something that will give away whatever he's holding back. But he's good at this. Too good. And you realize you're not just questioning him, you're questioning yourself, wondering if you're overreacting or if your instincts are warning you of something you can't quite see. You've done this before, you say, voice softening. It's not an accusation, but a reminder. A history you both share but never speak of. And I forgave you. His expression shifts, a flash of guilt crossing his eyes before he masks it with a tired smile. This isn't the same. Maybe it isn't. But the feeling it stirs in you is achingly familiar, the sense of being on uneven ground, never quite sure where the next step will take you. You don't want to be that person, the one who scrutinizes every move, but here you are, and it's because of him. Because of what he did before, and what he might be doing now. He reaches out, his hand brushing yours, a gesture meant to soothe, but it only makes you pull away. I'm sorry if it upset you. I didn't mean to. It was just a walk. But was it just a walk? Or was it something more, a flicker of an old flame, a spark of possibility? You don't know, and the not knowing is tearing you apart. You turn on your side, facing away from him, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on you. As you lie there in the darkness, you feel the distance between you grow wider, the silence stretching long and uneasy. You think about Emma, alone in her apartment, maybe replaying the night in her mind, just as you are. You wonder if she felt anything in those 8 minutes that you can't quite name. Or maybe she's just another piece of your husband's pattern, a pattern that's starting to feel too familiar to ignore. You close your eyes, fighting back the tears that threaten to spill, because you don't want him to hear you breaking. Not again. But inside, you're already beginning to fracture, and you're not sure how much more you can take before everything comes crashing down. In the quiet of the night, you make a promise to yourself, you will find out the truth, no matter how deep you have to dig. Because one way or another, you need to know what kind of man your husband really is, and whether you're just another stop along the way on his detours, or if you're still the home he's meant to come back to. As the days slip by, your husband seems unfazed, carrying on as though nothing has changed, but for you, every interaction feels like navigating a minefield. The unspoken tension festers, a third presence in your home that neither of you acknowledges but both feel deeply. His attempts to be affectionate feel forced, and your laughter doesn't come as easily as it used to. You start questioning everything, every late night, every work call, every time he seems just a little too distant. Then, there's that Friday night. You're at home, the soft hum of the TV barely audible over the thoughts racing through your mind. He's out again, this time for a team dinner, another work event you had no interest in attending. You try to distract yourself, scrolling aimlessly on your phone, but your mind keeps circling back. You think about how things used to be, when his eyes would light up at the sight of you, when his words were warm and genuine, when you never had to question his loyalty. Your thoughts spiral until you can't take it anymore. You dial his number, intending to make small talk, just to feel connected in some way. He answers, but the noise in the background is loud, laughter, music, voices. You ask him how it's going, and he gives you the usual, "It's fine, just wrapping up." But there's a pause, a slight hesitation that you've grown accustomed to spotting. In the background, you hear her voice, Emma's unmistakable laughter, light and carefree, weaving its way through the conversation. "Who's there with you?" you ask, trying to sound casual, but you know he can hear the tightness in your voice. Just the usual work crowd, he replies, but you can sense the discomfort in his tone. It's subtle, but it's there, and you've become an expert in detecting these minor shifts. He tries to change the subject, but your mind is already working overtime, piecing together fragments of things unsaid. After he hangs up, you feel something snap inside you. You've been patient, understanding, forgiving, but there's only so much you can give without breaking yourself in the process. You know it's time to confront this head-on, to stop pretending that this lingering unease will resolve itself. The next morning, you decide to lay it all out, no more dancing around the truth. You sit him down, and this time, your words are sharp, cutting through the polite facade you've both been maintaining. I heard her, you say, voice steady but laced with pain. You didn't think I'd notice, but I did. I always do. He stares at you, caught off guard, a mix of guilt and annoyance flashing in his eyes. We were all just hanging out, he says, but you're not buying it, not anymore. It's not about what you're saying, you snap, your frustration bubbling to the surface. It's about what you're not saying. It's about the fact that you keep putting yourself in situations that make me feel like this. Your voice cracks, and you hate how vulnerable you sound, but it's too late to pull back now. He runs a hand through his hair, exasperated, and for a moment, you think he might actually admit something. But instead, he looks at you with a weary expression, one that makes your heart sink. What do you want me to do? Stop living my life because you're paranoid? The words sting more than you'd care to admit. You thought he'd understand, that he'd meet you halfway, but instead, he's turning the blame on you, making your feelings seem irrational, burdensome. And that's when you realize, it's not just Emma, it's the fact that he doesn't see the damage he's causing. He's not even trying to. You swallow back your tears and take a deep breath. I want you to care about how this makes me feel, you say quietly, each word heavy with unspoken history. I want you to make me feel like I matter. Like we matter. He opens his mouth to respond, but for once, no excuse comes out. There's just silence, a silence that speaks volumes. You sit there, both of you staring at each other, neither willing to break the standoff. It's the moment of reckoning you've been avoiding, and now that it's here, it feels like standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure if you're about to fall or finally take flight. And as the tension hangs between you, a thought crystallizes in your mind. This is a crossroads, not just for your marriage, but for yourself. You can't force him to see what you see, and you can't keep losing pieces of yourself trying to fix something he won't even admit is broken. That night, when you lie in bed next to him, the gap between you feels wider than ever. But there's a quiet determination settling in your heart. You will not be held hostage by uncertainty. You will not let his indifference define your worth. And whether he realizes it or not, this is his last chance to prove that you're still his home, not just a convenience he returns to when it suits him. You turn off the light, and as the darkness envelopes you, you make a vow to yourself, you will find your way out of this, whether that means rebuilding together or walking away alone. Because you deserve a love that doesn't make you feel like you're constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. In one way or another, you will find that love, even if it's with the person staring back at you in the mirror. Days pass, but the unease lingers, a ghost haunting the corners of your mind. You try to shake it off, focus on work, your child, anything but the gnawing suspicion that has taken root inside you. But the doubt doesn't fade, it grows, twisting with every smile he offers and every late-night text that pulls his attention elsewhere. You begin to watch him, not overtly, but in the subtle ways, the way his phone never seems to leave his side, the casual mentions of coworkers that now make your skin crawl. You hate this version of yourself, the one that has to be the detective in her own marriage, but it's better than being blindsided. Better than being left in the dark again. One night, after putting your child to bed, you decide you can't just sit in this uncertainty any longer. While he showers, you find yourself hovering near his phone. You tell yourself it's not a breach of trust, it's self-preservation. A quick glance, that's all. Just something to quiet the storm inside your head. The screen lights up, and you see her name, Emma. It's an innocuous message, nothing incriminating, just a thanks again for walking me home. But it's followed by another, "It was really nice talking to you. We should do it again sometime." Your chest tightens. It's not evidence of an affair, but it's enough to confirm what you've been dreading. That walk wasn't just a one-time courtesy. It was an invitation, a door slightly ajar, and you can't help but wonder if he's thinking of stepping through. When he comes back into the room, towel draped around his shoulders, you're already bracing yourself. You confront him, your voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. He tries to brush it off, but there's no brushing off the look in your eyes, the hurt, the betrayal, the exhaustion of constantly wondering if you're enough. "I didn't do anything wrong," he insists, but it feels hollow, defensive. His excuses sound more like rehearsals than truths, and you're tired of feeling like the villain for wanting honesty in your own marriage. "I need you to understand," you say, your voice breaking. "This isn't about her. It's about us. It's about every time you make me feel like I'm competing with something I can't see." He sits down, head in his hands, and for a moment, you think he might finally get it. But then he looks up, and there's no apology, just frustration. "I'm not that guy anymore," he says, almost pleading. "But you keep treating me like I am." And that's when you realize something crucial. It's not just about whether he's being faithful, it's about whether he's making you feel secure, valued, and seen. It's about the empty spaces he's leaving between you, spaces you can't fill on your own. In that moment, you make a decision. Not a dramatic one, not the kind that ends marriages overnight. But a quiet, resolute choice to stop pretending everything's fine. To demand more from him, and from yourself. You'll seek counseling, if he's willing. You'll rebuild, if he's ready. But you won't ignore your instincts, and you won't let his detours become your downfall. As you lie in bed that night, his back turned to yours, you know the road ahead won't be easy. Trust once broken is hard to mend, and the cracks in your foundation won't magically disappear. But you also know this, you deserve more than uncertainty. You deserve more than detours. And whether he chooses to walk beside you or away from you, you'll find your way back to solid ground, even if you have to do it alone. In the stillness of the night, you hold on to that thought, refusing to let it go. Because no matter how this ends, you are more than just a side character in his story. You are the author of your own, and it's time you start writing it on your terms.